Amazing. So thank you everybody for joining us today. We'll just get started. My name is Amanda Very, and I am the manager of the Office of Research Trainees. My job is to support all of the students and postdocs at UHN. Thank you all for joining us today for this webinar and getting started in research. In this webinar, you'll hear from high school and undergraduate students who have performed research at UHN. They'll share their experience and advice with you and answer any of the questions that you have. I want to give a huge thank you first to our panelist, Maya Fields, who initiated this workshop and brought the idea to us and helped us plan it. So thank you so much to Maya, because without you, this wouldn't exist. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to acknowledge the land that we're on. So there has been a UHN hospital on this land since 1829. Long before that, Indigenous people were its stewards. Regardless of where we sit today, we owe much to the peoples that have called this land home. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This land is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work here. We remember and honor the legacy of the peoples who have been here before us and all who work to make the promise of truth and reconciliation real. So we encourage all of you to take a moment to acknowledge the land that you're currently on. You can receive your own land information by texting your city and province to the number on the slide. And there's also a QR code that you can scan to learn more. So next, I just want to give a couple of guidelines before we get started. We will be sharing the recording. There aren't really many slides to share, but we'll share the recording with all of you after so you can review it. We ask that you all remain muted and keep your video off. If you can, please put all your questions on the Slido instead of putting them in the chat. You can access the Slido using the QR code on the slide here. You can also go to slido.com and join with the code 1387640. I'll be putting the information in the chat as well. This just helps us to ensure that everything in the conversation goes smoothly. If you see a question that you wanted to ask, feel free to thumbs that one up so it goes to the top and gets asked first. And lastly, this is a safe space. We want to respect everybody, and any disrespectful activity will not be tolerated and will result in removal from the event. So with that, we will get started. So I'm so excited to have a fantastic panel here today to share their experiences. So why don't we kick it off with our co-organizer, Maya.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maya. I'm a recent graduate from the University of Guelph Biomedical Science program, and I currently work as a research analyst at TIER, which is the Institute for Education Research at UHN. So I'll just quickly share how I got involved in research. So I got involved between my second and third year of my undergrad. I knew that I wanted to do some research, and so I went online and started looking at different summer research programs in May of the summer, which is probably a little bit later than you should be starting. I actually found a program at St. Michael's Hospital, which is part of Unity Health. It mentioned that you have to contact researchers directly. And I thought that I wanted to do something that had more of an interprofessional lens. So it involved combining like philosophy, sociology with my interest in public health and medicine. And so I ended up looking at different researchers' bios, and I emailed a few of interest, one of them being my current supervisor. And it turned out that she had recently started working at UHN, and so that's how I ended up here. In my email to her, I introduced myself, my school, and my program, and I explained to her why her research interests aligned with mine, and also mentioned one of her papers that I'd read. I asked her if she would be willing to meet to discuss further. And none of the other researchers I had contacted had responded to me, but she did. And the reason I mention that is to tell you not to be discouraged if a professor doesn't answer you, because people are busy and they may just miss your email. And so I met with her, I interviewed, and I ended up getting the position. I worked with her for that summer, and then I continued to work with her part-time through the rest of my undergrad. And now that I've graduated, I've started working as a research analyst full-time. And so the bulk of my research is in medical education, specifically looking at critical reflection. And when I first started, my major research project was looking at how COVID-19 changed how psychological safety was talked about in an annual research seminar that takes place at UHN each year.
Amazing. Thank you, Maya. And we look forward to hearing more. Next up, we have Nuha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nuha Swaher, and I'm a grade 12 student. I'm also currently a research trainee at the Ajmera Transplant Center at Toronto General Hospital. So I got into research through the ASPIRE program, which stands for the Advanced Student Placement Integrating Research Education Program at Toronto General Hospital. And this program is for high-achieving grade 11 and 12 students who are interested in pursuing a career in research or who want to gain firsthand clinical research experience. So initially, when I was looking for a research position, I asked a lot of my teachers and people I knew who were doing research at the time, and they hadn't heard of any research programs. So, like Maya, I took to looking online, and UHN has a web page on their website that has a list of research programs. So I remember going through that web page and finding Aspire, and they had a brochure, but there wasn't a date. So I looked at the email that was linked underneath the brochure, and I emailed the program director. So I introduced myself. I said I was interested in the program and that I was wondering if it was continuing to run this summer. And I got a response back. So I introduced, and again, like I introduced myself, and they gave me the application form. And so I was able to fill that out, go through the application process, and become a research trainee for this past summer. So my research currently involves creating a website to educate high school students about organ donation. So we mainly want to promote organ donation and educate high school students about these common misconceptions related to organ donation. So I was able to conduct research to find ways to educate high school students through a more interactive manner, such as creating a website and allowing them to look at all these resources that relate to learning about organ donation. So that was the research I was currently working on.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Laura, you're up next.
Yeah, hi, my name is Laura. I'm currently an undergraduate student. I'm in my last year. I'm studying psychology at UTM. How I got started with research was through ROSI. So that's Research Application Support Initiative to help COS members, which are students that are Black, Indigenous, Filipino, Latin American, or mature students, and people who recognize that they have disabilities. So they have this huge group of people that help students secure research positions anywhere. You can also find them on, I think it's U of T's medicine website. Like there's a link that you can go and sign up to receive these emails. And then that will link you to a app called Mentor City. And then that's where will get all of the notifications. I applied late as well. I applied in, I think, April or May, but I'm totally grateful for all the opportunities that I was able to get. But through this program, they started with a mentorship program where they kind of pair you up with someone else. And then you're connected to a bunch of workshops on how to curate your CV, how to email PIs properly, which is a big thing. There's a lot of students that don't know how to contact PIs. Just indicating that you're interested in research is not enough. You have to indicate why and kind of give examples of the research of why you want to work in their lab that summer. But yes, that's how I got started through that program, through the Rossi program.
Amazing. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about the kind of research you're working on or that you were working on?
Yeah, I was able to be on the Piper team at Toronto Rehab. So the Piper team is under the Craven Lab. The Craven Lab works on spinal cord injuries, and then the Piper team is under that. And we work on how to engage patients in research. You don't want to see patients as just participants. You want them involved in the research. You want their contribution, because their comments often can shift on how the way you can study the research as well. So we look at them more than just participants. They're like your coworker. They're like a team member in the research.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Roger?
Hi everyone, I'm Roger. If you hear construction in the background, they chose the worst time to do construction on my house, so my apologies for that. Um, but yeah, so I did my undergrad in kinesiology at Ontario Tech University. I graduated from that program this last April, but it was recent, so like I can talk about it. How did I get involved with research? Well, I knew I wanted to get involved in research, but I didn't really know how. Something that my undergrad program did was they gave a bonus on your final grade for a class if you participate in research, and if you're eligible for that research in the school. So in my third year of undergrad, I participated in a master's students research project. I found it interesting. I chatted a bit with the student while I was participating, and I wanted to get involved more, make some connections. So I offered to help in the lab. I then asked the master student if there are any opportunities to do research, and he connected me with his supervisor, who was eventually my undergraduate supervisor. This was my first research experience. From there, it was easier to get more research under my belt. But that first experience is always, it always seems like it's the hardest to get. And I was fortunate enough to make some connections and have that opportunity. Now for my research at UHN, I did research at Princess Margaret through the UFT Summer Undergraduate Research Program, or the SERP program. Just a note, the applications for that program are open right now, so it would be a good idea to check it out. There were a few projects I was involved in at Princess Margaret, but mainly a study on peripheral neuropathy, which is tingling in your limbs that can happen after chemotherapy. And now I'm in a 2-year research-based master's program at UFT, which I wasn't even considering when I first started research. So it's pretty cool how things work out that way.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Last but not least, Gertie? Oh, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're good.
Great. So, hi everyone. I am Skirty Progri. I'm currently a third-year student specializing in physiology at the University of Toronto. I'm also currently a research assistant in the BrainTO lab, which is a lab part of Krembil Research Institute at Toronto Western Hospital, part of UHN. My research currently revolves around the colostrum, which is essentially a very interesting yet mysterious brain structure that has been hypothesized to be linked with various important aspects of human life, such as, for example, consciousness or attention or sleep, and many psychiatric or neurological disease. And our lab's essentially just trying to get a better understanding of how the colostrum exactly works by using advanced MRI techniques. So that was a bit about my research so far. And now to talk a bit about how I first got into research, I have to admit that I was actually lucky enough to get into research by starting as part of the research project that I'm continuing to this day. So just like I heard, I believe many of my peers mention, I was also a bit late to the application process. I applied around April, and that is after looking at an announcement that my university had made about this STAR program, That was a program hosted by the Office of Research Trainees at UHN. And it was essentially an announcement that talked about this research position that was looking at uncovering the mystery of the colostrum, what I just previously told you. So I found that to be really interesting. I found myself wanting to learn more about the colostrum. And so I read a bit about the papers of the lab that was holding this research position. I also learned a bit more about the colostrum, and similarly to what has been mentioned, I crafted a cover letter and a resume, sent in my transcript through an email, and reached out to the graduate student that was leading this project and was lucky enough to get an interview. In the interview, I essentially showcased that I was thoroughly interested in this project. I was thoroughly interested in the colostrum, and then again, was lucky enough to be offered the position. I then completed my summer term as a summer student, part of the STAR program, and then was again lucky enough to be offered a research assistant position, and I am now still looking at how the colostrum exactly functions.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I love too that a few of the panelists here were part of our program and actually won awards for giving great talks, which is wonderful. And if you do secure a position at UHN, we have lots of programming to support you and to help you in your development while you're at UHN, which is great. So I will start with a question for all of you. How did you determine what research topics that you were interested in? And I'll start maybe with Maya.
Sure. So I think is something that is constantly evolving, and even now after being in research for a couple years, I'm still figuring it out. But I think figuring out what classes I was interested in helped a lot. So when I had just finished my second year, I remember taking courses in molecular biology and not really enjoying it. And so I thought, maybe working in a wet lab is not the place for me to start. And I also realized I really enjoyed the humanities electives I had taken and looking at how they overlapped with my science core courses. And so I knew that I wanted, like I said before, to do something interdisciplinary and kind of combine those. And so I looked for researchers whose interests aligned with what I thought my interests were based on classes. But as I've worked with more researchers, because I've now worked in a few different research positions and I've gone further into my undergrad, I've also expanded my research interests. So I have worked in a wet lab at this point and I really enjoyed it. I also did a fourth year thesis in epidemiology, which I really enjoyed. So I just think the main thing is keep an open mind and really take what you learn in class and try and find your niche throughout that.
Anybody else have insights that they want to share to that question?
I would love to add on to that. So the Aspire program works a little bit differently in terms of because as a high school student, you don't really know what research topics you're interested in. So through the Aspire program, you have the opportunity to be exposed to all these different research topics related to transplantation. So I remember during the program in the summer, I had the opportunity of spending a week learning about kidney viruses, all types of kidney viruses. And through that, what's so special about the Aspire program is you can apply what you learn. So because I didn't know much about kidney viruses, I was able to talk to different people, talk to the students that I work with in the MOT SRTP program. So that's another program. I think it stands for the Multi-Organ Transplant Student Research Training Program. And this program it ranges from undergraduate students to students pursuing professional studies. And so through talking to these students and learning about all these kidney viruses, I was able to apply it to other opportunities to the program, such as doing a clinical observership. So the Aspire program gives you opportunities to apply what you learned. And through that, I was able to observe a nephrologist throughout his day in the clinic. And so I would follow the nephrologist around and see how he interacted with patients. And I could apply what I learned through actual concerns that patients had about these viruses. So what's so special is you can apply what you've learned. And as well, through the program, you also have the opportunity of participating in Aspire seminars. So the MOT SRTP students, they would be given a topic related to transplantation, such as the physiology of a kidney or immunosuppressants or other topics related to cardiology. And as an Aspire student, you have the opportunity to be taught these different research topics from students. And so you're able to get that sort of idea of what research you're interested in, and you have the opportunity to pursue those further in the program.
Amazing. Skirty, it looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, sure. So I also wanted to kind of add my own little experience about how I found out what research really interested me. So I just wanted to start off by saying that I think just like many other undergraduates, I really didn't know what topic was really the one I wanted to go into. So of course, I was interested in a range of topics. It's not like I started off with a clear idea that neuroscience was what I wanted to go into. I looked at research positions that were in really general field of microbiology, biochemistry, physiology, and also neuroscience. And the thing is, what I found was this kind of going into these general fields was really helpful because as I read more and more about what these researchers were doing in their own labs, for example, the microbiology labs and whatnot, as I started reading more about their research, I found out that maybe that wasn't really an area that interested me. Whereas when I started reading a bit more about the research project I'm currently part of, as I said, I found myself wanting to learn more about it. Right, I found myself going out of my way and looking into research papers about the classroom, about neuroscience, and I think that was kind of a clear indication that I had found a research topic I was interested in. So if I were to kind of turn this into the form of an advice, it would be that it is completely okay to not have a clear idea of the research topic that interests you right from the very beginning. I think that going with a general idea of what piques your interest is a good idea. And then as you kind of read more and more about what kind of research is going on in different labs, for example, at UHN, you will see that these specific research topics will kind of make you want to learn more about them. And at that point, you've kind of found the research topic that will likely be a good match for you.
Awesome. To add to that, I will say I didn't really know what kind of research I was interested in until grad school, because I got my first research job by picking whatever would take me, and then saw if I liked that, and then tried something different, and then saw if I liked that, and then tried something different. And I was part of a great program in grad school where I got to rotate in 3 labs first before picking my supervisor. So I got to try out, one zebrafish lab, one microbiology lab, one yeast lab. So I really got to mix it up a bit. So if you're indecisive or you just don't know, don't worry about it. And sometimes that flexibility in topic is important because research positions can be competitive, especially when you're trying to get your first one. So another question for the panel is, do you have any tips on how to find a research position? I know many of you already provided some information, but there's other questions that are asking about advice for people applying for the first time, and whether you should email many scientists all at once, or if you should wait for a response from one before emailing the other. So any advice that you have?
Sure, I can say something about that. So, as I said before, and for me and from what I've heard, the first research position is always the hardest to find. But after that, it's easier to get the ball rolling. My biggest tip is to make connections at your school. And I know you've probably heard this, and it isn't always easy. But I find that this is the easiest way to find positions. Um, so in my case, I attended some research. I volunteered as a participant, which is a way I connected with the graduate student, and then they helped me connect to their supervisor. But like simply going to professors or a TA's office hours, um, talking to the TAs in the lab after the lab, just showing that you're a capable student, that you're like ambitious, and that you're someone that people can work with, is a good start. There are also so many opportunities in university to make connections. You just kind of have to put yourself in these situations, and I know it can be uncomfortable, but uh, you just kind of have to be uncomfortable sometimes to do that. My second tip would be, which I think is an underrated tip for finding research positions, is to keep your grades high. Um, from what I've heard, the first thing supervisors look at when you apply are your grades, and this is especially true when you don't have much research experience under your belt. Um, and then my last tip is just to apply. Apply to programs. Again, there are quite a few summer programs with open applications now. Even if you don't think you have a chance, it's good to just apply. My first research program was actually at Sick Kids, and I thought I had no chance in getting in, but I just applied, and it's helped me get so many other opportunities since. Um, you can even email like cold email supervisors asking for either research positions or even just asking them if you can check out their lab just to see if you're interested. Just something to get your foot in the door. But yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Roger. Laura, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, where to find them? I know UFT has ROPs. They're called Research Opportunity Programs. Um, I think you can get a credit for them. I'm not sure, but you can start your research at school there. I know for me, some of the programs I wasn't that interested in at UFT, so that's why I opted for the ROSC program. And for them, they send like a very big list of research programs, but also the catch is they don't want you emailing like 10 PIs. You have to be specific in your goals on what you want to reach for your research goals. So I think like the max they told us to apply to is like 5, just because they don't want like a bombardment of emails to all these PIs. um yeah, just that was just one of the things. Also LinkedIn has a lot of research programs. I know over the weekend or this past week I saw like at least five of them on LinkedIn, and I kept sharing them on my Facebook book, my Instagram. Students, if you want a research program, apply to this. So even if you see that, you can kind of spread that out to your friends as well. LinkedIn has a lot of research programs. I think Women's College just sent theirs out. Their deadline's on the 31st. So if you're interested in that, you can apply to that one as well.
Amazing, thank you. All of the hospitals in Toronto, or almost all of them, have a different sort of research program. So it's a great place to check out each of the hospitals and what they offer, check out their deadlines, and yeah, check out programs that provide assistance to help you find a supervisor, but also programs that provide support and education while you're at those positions. Anybody else have extra tips on how to apply to research positions?
I would just like to add that several research programs also host information sessions, either in person or online. So I know that the Aspire program is going to host an information session in February because their application is due at the end of February. And I know that they also have a career seminar in the summer. So if you're interested in dropping by at the hospital and meeting people and networking with others, it's a great opportunity and also to check out where you'd potentially be working. So getting used to the atmosphere in the area, it's definitely a great benefit. And as well, I know the MOT SRTP program, so the undergraduate version of Aspire, their application is due for the summer program. It's due at the end of February, and then for the winter program, it's due in July. So they definitely have information sessions for that program as well, if you're interested.
and saying thanks for sharing. Anybody else have any last burning thoughts before we move to the next question? Awesome. So the next question I have for all of you is just if you can give any kind of tips of anything that helped you get started with your research when you started your first research experience. So if there are any resources or supports that you found really helpful for building your research skills.
So I guess I can take this one on.
Yeah.
And I suppose I'll go from my own experience. I believe I forgot to mention this, but I kind of really got interested in finding a research position during my second year. So that was kind of the year where I was trying every resource to get a research position. And the first resource I turned to was actually a career advisor at my own university, which was something I haven't heard mentioned a lot, but I believe it helped me a lot. And I believe they are present at any or most universities. But essentially what I got from that meeting was that at the time I was at the first stages of my second year. So I was under the belief that I did have no research experience, but I was under the belief that I had no experience and nothing to offer to a lab. So the kind of advice I got from the career advisor was that, well, in fact, much of the work that you do in courses during your undergrad career, or maybe even in high school, is essentially skills that will, in one way or another, be transferable to a lab or a research setting. So it is really important to kind of, if you have no previous research position, which that was the case for me, I believe that is the case for many undergraduates, it is always really important to kind of highlight skills that you may already have from completing group projects, from doing lab work for your courses and whatnot. So that was something that really helped me and changed the way I was approaching my applications. And I suppose if I were to think about this chronologically, after visiting a career advisor, another thing I did was actually visit an ORT webinar, which is kind of a coincidence. I believe it was around December when I visited a similar webinar that was talking about how to get into research. And I also heard a lot about from undergraduate students and about their experience, and definitely applied what they had learned from their own experience to kind of shape the way I was approaching my applications. So I guess what I'm trying to say by this is that you are definitely in the right direction by attending this webinar, and that if you just keep it up and don't get discouraged by maybe a rejection, you will eventually secure a research position for sure.
Amazing, thank you. I will say too, a lot of career advisors are really helpful at providing feedback on resumes as well. And I find that a lot of people could use some feedback on their resumes just to make them stronger and highlight more the things that are relevant to research. And so if you can visit your career advisor and get that feedback, I think it can be really useful because it helps give you a more polished look, a more professional look, and gives it more of a way for the PI to look at your resume or your application and see exactly why you would be a good fit for them if you put that extra work into it. So I think that's great. I will also put in the chat the link to our last summer research information session where we gave lots of tips of how to apply for summer research positions. If any of you missed that, you can check out the recording. Does anybody else, any of the other panelists have tips they'd like to share?
Sure, I can give my 2 cents as well. So yeah, attending these seminars is a huge first step. I attended quite a few and I learned so many new things. Also, the career advising is a great tip as well. I look back at my resume and stuff before I went to career advising, and I'm like, I cannot believe this is what I had as my resume. They do really help. But something for that works for me specifically to get started in research. I was too like nervous to reach out to supervisors, which you shouldn't be. But I was more okay with reaching out to like graduate students who would like, because I had more of a connection with them. They would like, I'd see them more face to face. I would actually engage a conversation. So it was easier to reach out to the graduate students and ask them if their supervisor had any opportunities or if they needed help with anything. That way I could get my foot in the door. And then the second part of the question was, were there any resources or supports that helped me build my research skills? Well, if you find a supervisor, I think your supervisor should be your biggest support in helping your research skills. Um, but you can also, and something that I used, a lot of schools have free, like one-on-one consulting with with a writer, or different skills that are useful in research. That's something I've used quite a bit in my undergrad and now in my master's as well. And it's been so helpful. And I wish I started it earlier. But I think almost every school has it. You can go online and you can search up if there's like some writing support or different skills you want support related to that. That was really big in helping me develop my skills.
Thank you for sharing. And I will second what you said. As a former graduate student, I know for sure that the summer students or the students who would reach out to me, had a better chance of getting a response than they had reaching out to my PI because I get less emails than them. But also if it was somebody I had worked with in a class that I had TA'd or, some other way, it helps build that connection. And then I would go to my supervisor and say, I really like this student. I think they're really good. I think, it would be great if you could give them an interview. That gives you kind of a step in the door, and a step, up the email list of all the emails they get. So I think that's a great tip. Amazing. So we have some questions from the audience. So the first one is, did you follow a specific format when writing your cover letter or your email expressing your interest? And I don't know if I want to take that one. Or
Yeah, sure.
And Laura?
So I definitely took the more cold email approach. And I did follow a general format. I started by like saying dear and doctor, whatever their name was. I'd introduce myself, say the year I'm in and the university I study at. I said, I'm greatly interested in your research and would love to volunteer work, whatever it may be in your lab, depending on the type of position you're looking for. I would explain, I think I'd say something like, during my undergrad, I've taken courses in, let's say they did cancer immunology. I've taken courses in immunology and I've taken courses in biology, which I believe are two main focuses of your research. From looking at your bio and looking at this, I'd look at one of their papers, skim it a little bit. I believe that your research aligns with my interests because of whatever the reason may be. Let's say it was cancer immunology, because I've taken these courses and I've really enjoyed them, and I think your research aligns with this specific thing I learned in class. I would greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I would attach my CV and my unofficial transcript because, like Roger said, grades are definitely something that the professor is going to look at. And I'd end it with something like, thank you for your consideration, and then my name.
I would second that. I think that's a great approach. There's no one format you can use, but I think that hits all of the major points of what I usually recommend for students. Laura, did you want to add something?
Yeah, it is the exact same thing Maya said. I would even like really go into why you would like to be in their lab, like Maya said. indicating like a research paper that they've done would really help instead of you just saying, I'm interested in your research. You have to obviously explain why, because I'm sure they get other emails just saying, interested in your research. I would like to be part of your lab. You need to kind of expand more on that. I think what also helped was my CV. I know they like to see your professional experience, academic experience, but like even at the bottom, you can put an about me kind of section because you are more than just a student, obviously. You know, you have extracurriculars, you have hobbies, maybe expand more about yourself. We're all students, but you're more than just that, right? You have interests outside of school. That also helps as well.
Amazing, thank you. Anybody have other tips?
So I had one last thing to add because I also wanted to kind of emphasize that, again, when I started out, I was in a similar kind of situation. I really did not know how to write a cover letter at all. So the first thing I did was to actually use the internet to my advantage. So I would essentially look at cover letter templates about applying to research positions. And that was a really nice first resource to kind of get me going. And then I personalized it on my own. As Maya already mentioned, it's really important to add your own take on it and show that you've done your work and that you have read their research paper and that you're genuinely interested in their work. And as I already previously mentioned, my CV was also mostly informed by the conversation I had with the career advisor. So yeah, there's plenty of resources and
I would say one point to clarify is that if you're applying by email, cold emailing PIs, you don't have to include a cover letter because you kind of view the text of your email as your cover letter. That's where you're going to explain why you're interested and who you are. In that case, like you want those emails to be kind of short, so you want to make sure that they're succinct. You have less space than you would put in a cover letter, let's say. But if you're applying to summer research positions, so the one that Skirty applied to was a job posting, or if you're applying to certain programs, they might require a cover letter instead because it's a different format of applying. So always keep in mind, that there are different requirements, different ways depending on the way that you apply. But if you're emailing, don't use a cover letter, but think of the email as your cover letter. We have another question that asks, is it too late to look for research internships now, and what are my chances? I would say this is wonderful that we have such a wide array of examples here of people who started later than January and were able to find positions. So technically, it is never too late. The earlier you start, the better chance you may have because many labs have limited positions. So let's say they only have 2 and they set them up by the first people that email, then they might not have positions later on. Other people start looking later in the summer or later in the season. So it's more a numbers game. There's no specific odds of you getting a job. It depends on so many different factors, including your application and how your emails look and all of those kind of things. But you definitely have a chance, and it's never too late. But now is a great time to be looking, especially for programs. There are many programs who have deadlines coming up. You can find out all of the deadlines the programs we're aware of on our website, which was also mentioned during the information session that I put the link to. I have a question for Laura. When during the year can a student join the RASI program?
So you can join the program anytime, as long as you sign up under the link. It's on the U of T Medicine, the School of Medicine website under COAS, Community of Support, but you can sign up anytime. And then they'll link you to the app that's called Mentor City.
And they accept people into their program on a rolling basis, like Laura mentioned, so anytime. I put the link for RASI in the chat. You can also email me if you want any more resources directly relating to RASI. It's a fantastic program and they offer a lot of support, which is great. We have another question asking for advice for interviewing with a PI. So first off, if anybody has any tips for interviewing, but also there's a specific question about what is the best way to bring up details like hours that you'd have to work and it being a paid position.
I can start with that. I think number one tip, I think it's always important to come across excited, friendly, open to learning. So if you're the interviewee, let the interviewer take the lead. I think in terms of like preparing, a question that can be asked often is tell me about yourself. They want to hear something besides like what Laura said. You're not just a student, there's things outside of that. So it's a good place to highlight your interests that maybe you didn't talk about on your CV, things that you enjoy to do. I know I've only really had one really official interview when it was my first research position. And a lot of it was running through my CV and asking about my experiences on that. And mind you, none of them were research experiences because it was my first research role, but they asked me about things like, tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker when you were working as a camp counselor. And even though that's not directly applicable to research, you can apply in another way because you're always going to work with people. In terms of pay and hours, that's definitely something that can be a little awkward to bring up. I was lucky enough that it was kind of brought up for me. But I'd say if that isn't the case, you'll be offered a chance to ask questions at the end. And I think it's important on both ends to be transparent about expectations. And so you can just ask, what are you looking for in terms of the hours of commitment? Are you looking for this to be a volunteer position or are you offering some sort of compensation? Maybe I know I've been told things like, are there any grants that I can apply to in order to get funding to work in your lab? So those are things that you can consider asking.
Just adding on to that as well, through the Aspire program, for specifically the Aspire program and the MOT SRTP program, the application process is very lengthy in terms of the amount of material you have to submit. So I know for both of them, you have to submit your resume, a cover letter, your high school transcript, a 1,000-word scientific paper on a healthcare related topic. You have to get a reference from an educator. And once that's all done, there's the second phase of doing a group interview. So I remember during my group interview, we came on site and it was around 5 people and we were in this boardroom, and I remember the supervisor asking us to introduce ourselves and asking about our volunteer experiences, because as high school students we haven't really had any research experience prior, so they mainly focused on our work and volunteer experiences. And I remember him asking if we had any musical talents, because while the Aspire and MOT SRTP program are very research-based, they also focus a lot on volunteering. So I know this past summer we hosted a Music for the Heart and Soul concert in the conservatory at the hospital. So we had patients come and sit down and we would play music. So they wanted people who had some musical abilities as well or willing to volunteer in the program as well. So definitely, like, even though I didn't have any prior research experience, they asked a lot about my prior volunteer experiences and what that was like.
Amazing, thank you. I would say one other tip is if you're only looking for paid research positions and you're not available for volunteer positions, I would say when you're writing your email to apply, you can ask specifically like, I'm looking for a paid position, or I'm inquiring to see if you have a paid summer research position. And then they'll be clear usually when they respond back about whether that's available or if they have a volunteer position. And I highly recommend that people try to seek paid positions because there are many out there, and it's better if you get paid for the work you do.
I can also give my 2 cents again about this. So just as Maya said, I think being transparent with the person interviewing you is very, very important. Um, I understand that you're trying to impress them in the interview and you're gonna try to do whatever you can to make it look like you're the best applicant, like as you should. But it is important for you and your supervisor to match on what you want to do, right? It would suck to get this position and then your goals don't align with the supervisor. So being transparent has really helped me uh, find success in my interviewing. Um, I I would be transparent with about wanting to go into graduate school after with my supervisors, and they were usually very on board. Um, Sometimes if you want to do like medical school after or something like that, you can let your supervisor know that's your ultimate goal, but you want to pick up research skills first. And if they're on board, great. If they're not on board, then it isn't always a bad thing to not get the position. Maybe like it's for the best. Yeah, so transparency is my tip for that.
Absolutely. I agree completely. I think if it's not a good fit, you're better off looking for something else that is a better fit. And some research positions include possibilities for observerships or possibilities to do projects more related to clinical work or healthcare. So there could be research positions out there that are more open to people who are interested in med school. So I think that's a great approach to making sure that you have a position that fits for you as well. Another question, we have a couple of minutes left. How can I demonstrate a strong interest in research in my application if I don't have any research experience? I know some of you have already touched on this, but any additional advice for how to showcase your interest?
I think for me, because when I first started, I had absolutely no experience at all. On my CV, I had a section that said in research interests. So I specifically said what I would be interested in, just so the PI or the graduate student had a bit of a heads up of what topics that I wanted to go into. Yeah, because I didn't have any experience. I think the only professional experience was I was working at Tim Hortons at that time. So it really helped for me to put like my research interest onto my CV.
I like that a lot. Maya.
I did the same as Laura. I think I had at the top of my CV under my name, like a mission statement, I guess, like a strong student interested in whatever research. And then I think also just, I mean, I think a lot of people here have applied through programs. Like I said, I just cold emailed. And so that's where I think explaining how their research was aligned with the interests I have specifically through the classes I've taken, especially since as you get higher into your undergrad years, you have more electives. So if you're showing like, oh, I've taken an elective and exactly what your research is, then that kind of shows that that's something you may be interested in. So I think that's a good way to also show your research interests.
I think too, a lot of times you can make up for lack of experience by showing enthusiasm and showing dedication. So it doesn't have to be necessarily a perfect fit of your research interest, but if you're willing to put into the work and read about it and learn about it, A, you might develop more of an interest in it, but B, you'll be able to communicate more clearly what parts of it are interesting to you, and you'll show that effort that you're willing to put into the work into it. And research is a lot about effort. So it doesn't, showing that you're willing to put in the work, even just for an application, can go a long way. One more question. What can we put instead of previous experience when submitting a resume, especially if it's our first work or research experience? I know some of you have touched on this. It's definitely good to put any work experience that you had, no matter what the environment it's been. So, anything like camp counselor or Tim Hortons, like our panelist has mentioned, any type of environment that you've worked in. If you have any volunteer experience, that's always great too. It shows a little bit more about yourself, especially if you can quantify the number of hours you worked at things, any kind of quantifiable outputs of what you've done. So let's say you did a research project or a big group project, you know, in undergrad, and you got a great grade and it was related to research. That's something that you could highlight. If you volunteered for 100 hours at a hospital and helped supervise 20 other students, those kind of quantitative data to explain the experiences you've had really helps to build a stronger picture of what your experiences are and what it says about you. Any awards that you have that you've gotten from any part of your life would be great to include as well. People love seeing, you know, if you have many accomplishments, that shows that you're an ambitious person who has achieved other things and that you might be successful in this as well. So don't feel like you have to limit it to things that are related. You can use any part of your life that is professional and include that because it tells them something about you. When you're describing your program that you're currently in undergrad, I also recommend that students write about the courses that they've taken that are relevant to the research area. So don't list all of your courses. Don't list the course codes either. List the titles of the courses. And if you've taken any lab courses and they've included practical components, include that and include how many hours you did lab courses and what skills you learned that might be related to the job. So there's lots of different things. You have lots of skills that are relevant. It's just about seeing them and writing them down, even if you might not think that they're very related. Okay, with that, we have 2 minutes left. So I just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you to our amazing panelists. I hope that you learned a little bit more about how to access research and what getting started in research could be like. I will send out an email later that has the recording of this session. I'll also include some of the resources and links that we talked about today, including information on the RASI program, the Aspire program, our past information session recording. I have a list of all of the summer programs at UHN and U of T that we know about that I can share as well. And hopefully that can help you all on your journey getting started into research. So thank you again. There also, when you close Zoom, there'll be a feedback survey. We'd greatly appreciate if you take a couple seconds to fill that out and let us know what you thought about this event. And if you have ideas for more events that you'd like to see, please always feel free to reach out. So thank you so much to everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bye.